The order is already moving. It exists first as language, formal, precise, stripped of excess, a sequence of clauses arranged to leave no space between instruction and execution. It does not ask, it does not persuade. It states, it confirms, it authorizes. It is copied, stamped, transmitted, and acknowledged in the same motion, as if the system were built to move it faster than thought. No one reacts to it. Reaction is not required. The order passes through desks, through terminals, through hands trained to recognize structure rather than meaning. It is read in full and retained only as function. Each recipient understands not what it will cause, but what it demands next. Compliance is embedded in the phrasing, completion is implied. The order is neither rushed nor delayed. It arrives on schedule, consistent with all others before it. It is processed according to standing procedure, its arrival logged with the same ink, the same keystrokes, the same quiet certainty as any routine directive. There is no annotation, no margin note, no pause long enough to register difference. It does not announce danger. It does not hint at consequence. It carries authority without explanation, certainty without context. Its language assumes a world that will respond correctly to it, a world that will align itself around its instructions, step by step, without friction. The system accepts it immediately. Within moments, it is divided into subordinate instructions, each one reduced further, clarified, simplified. What began as a complete directive becomes a set of tasks, each detached from the whole. Movement replaces comprehension. Precision replaces judgment. Responsibility dissolves into sequence. There is no tension at this stage, no weight. The order is clean, elegant, final. It gives the impression of control. It suggests that everything ahead has already been accounted for, measured, approved. It moves downward without resistance, carried by channels designed to remove uncertainty. Each transfer confirms legitimacy. Each acknowledgement reinforces inevitability. The order becomes less visible as it spreads, absorbed into routine, indistinguishable from the thousands that preceded it. No one asks where it leads. That information is unnecessary. What matters is that it is valid, that it bears the correct authority, that it conforms perfectly to established form. Its correctness is assumed because it exists. Its logic is accepted because it has passed through the proper hands. By the time it reaches those who will act on it, the order no longer feels like a decision. It feels like a fact. And facts, once recorded, do not change. The order continues moving, uninterrupted, unchallenged, complete in its certainty, long after the moment when it still could have been stopped. The environment that receives the order is designed for clarity. Everything within it is arranged to remove ambiguity. Spaces are defined by function. Movement follows prescribed paths. Language is regulated, reduced to terms that eliminate interpretation. Nothing is left open-ended, because openness invites delay, and delay is treated as failure long before any outcome occurs. The order does not arrive alone. It is accompanied by an entire architecture built to support it. Forms align. Schedules adjust. Timetables shift by minutes that have already been calculated. The system reacts not as a collection of individuals, but as a single mechanism responding to input. Authority is layered here, not concentrated. It does not reside in a single figure or room. It exists as a gradient, descending steadily, diffused through procedure. Each level receives instruction only after it has been filtered, reformatted, and narrowed to what that level is permitted to know. No one at any point sees the order in full. At the upper tiers, it is abstract, framed in terms of objectives and compliance thresholds. It is discussed briefly, not for its substance, but for its alignment with standing doctrine. Its presence is noted. Its legality is assumed. The discussion ends as soon as confirmation is obtained. Lower down, the order becomes operational. It is broken into sequences, timelines, and allocations. The language changes, but the authority does not. Here, the concern is not whether the order is correct, but whether it can be executed precisely. Resources are counted. Personnel are assigned. Deviations are eliminated before they can occur. Each handoff is formalized. Each acknowledgement is recorded. The system leaves a trail of confirmations behind it, not to preserve memory, but to ensure that nothing interrupts the downward flow. At the lowest levels, the order appears only as instruction. It is no longer connected to purpose or rationale. It is a set of actions to be performed at specified times, in specified ways. Those tasked with carrying it out do not receive explanation, because explanation is not part of their function. This is not neglect. It is design. The structure depends on separation. Knowledge is compartmentalized so that no single point becomes overloaded with context. Context is considered inefficient. Context invites hesitation. Instead, the system favors clarity of role. Each participant understands precisely what is expected of them, and nothing beyond that. The hierarchy enforces this understanding without overt pressure. There are no raised voices, no visible coercion. Discipline is internalized long before the order arrives. Compliance is habitual, reinforced through repetition and reward. Advancement depends on reliability, not curiosity. The system has learned over time to distrust deviation. Procedures exist for everything: transmission, acknowledgement, execution, reporting. There are protocols for delay, protocols for error, protocols for loss of contact. But there is no protocol for refusal. The structure does not anticipate disagreement, because disagreement would imply a flaw in the chain itself, and the chain, by definition, is flawless. As the order descends, it encounters no resistance because resistance has been engineered out of the environment. Each level assumes that validation has already occurred elsewhere. Responsibility is perceived as upstream, already resolved. Downstream action is merely the fulfillment of an established conclusion. Efficiency is the system's greatest strength. It allows decisions to become reality quickly, cleanly, without friction. It ensures coordination across distance and complexity. It replaces uncertainty with alignment. It also removes the final opportunity for correction. By the time the order reaches the point where it will be enacted, it has passed through so many confirmations that it no longer feels provisional. It feels inevitable. The structure has closed around it, locking it into place. What moves next is not judgment. It is momentum. Execution begins on time, not early, not late. The system measures precision in minutes, and those minutes are met exactly. Signals are sent, received, acknowledged. Each acknowledgement confirms not understanding, but readiness. The language used is brief, standardized, stripped of tone. There is no room for interpretation because interpretation would introduce variance. Movement follows schedule. Units shift according to prearranged sequences, each action dependent on the one before it. Nothing occurs spontaneously. Every motion is tied to a timestamp, every transition governed by protocol. Coordination replaces awareness. Timing replaces judgment. Those involved do not see themselves as acting on an order. They are performing a function. Their role is defined narrowly, and within that definition, they operate with practiced efficiency. Training takes over where thought might otherwise intrude. The procedures are familiar. They have been rehearsed under conditions designed to simulate certainty. Communication is constant but limited. Messages confirm position, status, completion. No message asks why, no message suggests alteration. The system does not require explanation to proceed. It requires only confirmation that each component remains aligned. The order exists now as action. At this stage, it is no longer a document or a directive. It has become movement across space, synchronized effort across multiple points. The original phrasing is irrelevant. What matters is adherence. Each task is performed exactly as instructed, without deviation, because deviation would introduce error. And error is defined here as failure to comply. There is no silence filled with doubt. Silence is procedural, filled with routine checks and scheduled reports. When communication pauses, it is because the protocol dictates that nothing further needs to be said. The environment responds predictably. Equipment operates within expected parameters. Personnel execute their assignments without incident. The system appears to function as intended. Its efficiency is visible in the absence of confusion. No one intervenes because there is nothing yet to intervene in. The order assumes a stable reality, and for a time, reality complies. The system reads this compliance as validation. Each successful step reinforces confidence in the process. The absence of resistance is interpreted as confirmation that the assumptions embedded in the order remain intact. Adjustments are not considered because adjustments are not authorized. The procedures specify exact conditions under which changes may be made, and those conditions have not been met. The structure rewards adherence, not improvisation. Reports move upward even as actions continue downward. They are brief, factual, unemotional. They confirm that execution is proceeding according to plan. They contain no analysis because analysis would suggest uncertainty. Certainty is required. The order continues to unfold across layers of coordination that never intersect. Each segment completes its part without seeing the whole. This separation is not perceived as limitation. It is perceived as clarity. Each participant knows their task, and nothing beyond it. Time advances in increments that have already been accounted for. The system measures success not by outcome, but by conformity to schedule. As long as events align with the projected timeline, the execution is considered correct. Deviations are monitored, but none are yet significant enough to trigger response. The order demands consistency, and consistency is delivered. There is no hesitation at any point. No pause long enough to invite reconsideration. The structure does not allow for it. The procedures are designed to carry action forward once initiated, reducing the possibility of interruption. At this stage, the order has achieved full momentum. It moves through the system as something self-sustaining, propelled by coordination and compliance. The individuals involved become interchangeable components, each performing a role that could be filled by another without altering the outcome. What matters now is not intention, but completion. The order advances uninterrupted exactly as it was given. The first indications do not announce themselves as failure. They appear as minor irregularities, small enough to remain within acceptable limits. A delay measured in seconds. A report that arrives incomplete, then corrected. A confirmation that requires repetition before it is properly logged. Each deviation is noted, categorized, and absorbed by the system without alarm. The order continues unchanged. The structure is designed to accommodate friction. It anticipates minor disruptions and contains them through redundancy. When one element lags, another compensates. When information arrives out of sequence, it is reordered. These mechanisms exist to preserve continuity, not to question direction. As execution progresses, the discrepancies accumulate. They do not cluster in one place. They appear across separate points, disconnected from one another by distance and hierarchy. No single irregularity exceeds tolerance. No individual report justifies escalation. Each is interpreted locally, addressed within its own narrow frame. The system sees noise, not pattern. Upward communication remains formal. Reports continue to confirm compliance, though the language begins to tighten. Phrases become more precise. Timestamps are double-checked. There is a subtle increase in verification, an unspoken acknowledgement that alignment requires more effort than anticipated. Still, the order stands. Those responsible for monitoring execution observe the data with professional detachment. The metrics do not yet violate thresholds. The order's parameters remain technically satisfied. According to doctrine, intervention at this stage would be premature. The structure discourages preemption. To alter an order requires justification that can survive scrutiny. Scrutiny demands evidence that is clear, centralized, and undeniable. What exists instead is fragmentation. Each warning sign is isolated by the very system designed to process it efficiently. At lower levels, adjustments are made instinctively but invisibly. Small compensations are introduced to maintain schedule. These are not deviations, but permissible flexibilities embedded in the procedures. They are intended to preserve the order's intent without altering its form. In doing so, they conceal the emerging flaw. The original assumptions embedded in the order begin to diverge from conditions on the ground. This divergence is gradual, subtle enough to evade immediate recognition. The order continues to rely on a reality that is no longer fully present, but the system lacks a mechanism to reassess that reality once execution has begun. Reevaluation would require suspension. Suspension would require authority. Authority would require admission that the initial directive may be incomplete. No such admission occurs. As inconsistencies grow, communication increases in volume, but not in substance. Messages become more frequent, yet remain constrained by protocol. Each one addresses a specific issue without connecting it to others. The language remains neutral, procedural, devoid of interpretation. The system interprets persistence as resilience. When certain actions produce results that do not align perfectly with projections, those results are attributed to external variance rather than internal design. The order itself is not examined. It is treated as fixed, a constant against which variables must adjust. This assumption preserves stability. It also prevents correction. By the time it becomes clear to some that the deviations are not random, the opportunity to intervene has narrowed. The order has advanced beyond points where alteration would be simple. Reversing course now would require coordination across multiple layers, each dependent on the continuation of the original plan. Momentum becomes constraint. The structure prioritizes coherence over accuracy. Maintaining alignment is valued more highly than addressing inconsistency. The system continues to move forward, interpreting resistance as something to be overcome rather than understood. Warnings surface, but they are procedural, not declarative. They suggest caution without demanding change. They are acknowledged, filed, and superseded by the next required action. The order remains intact. What emerges now is not panic, but strain. The system stretches to preserve execution, compensating where it can, ignoring what it must. The gap between instruction and reality widens, but the hierarchy holds firm, enforcing continuity through discipline and routine. The failure is no longer theoretical. It is present, active, and expanding. And still the order moves forward, unchanged. The transition from strain to collapse is not marked by a single moment. It occurs as a sequence of thresholds crossed quietly, one after another without announcement. Each threshold is technical, defined by parameters that were once considered conservative. As they are exceeded, the system responds as it was designed to respond, by compensating, reallocating, and pressing forward. The order does not adapt. What fails first is not control, but margin. The allowances built into the structure begin to erode. Redundancies narrow, timelines compress. Tasks that were once separated by buffers now overlap. The system remains functional, but only just. Reports upward change in character. They become denser, more frequent, more precise. Each one confirms execution while simultaneously documenting conditions that are no longer neutral. The language remains formal, but the data reveals compression, congestion, loss of elasticity. These signals are interpreted as operational stress, not structural error. The distinction matters. Operational stress can be managed. Structural error cannot, without revision of the order itself. No revision is authorized. The hierarchy does not provide a mechanism for reinterpretation once execution has passed a certain point. The assumption of correctness persists, reinforced by the fact that so much has already been committed. Commitment replaces evaluation. As the system pushes forward, coordination begins to fragment. Not dramatically, not chaotically, but incrementally. Actions that were meant to occur in sequence now occur in proximity. Movements intersect where separation was assumed. Dependencies collide. The order demands alignment that reality can no longer provide. At multiple points, the system registers conflict, incompatible requirements arriving simultaneously, resources assigned to fulfill mutually exclusive tasks. Each instance is resolved locally, according to protocol. One task is prioritized, another is delayed. Both decisions are correct within their limited scope. Together, they accelerate failure. The structure absorbs these contradictions without pause. It has no global perspective at this stage, only distributed execution. No single point holds enough authority or visibility to suspend the process. Each layer assumes that coherence exists elsewhere. It does not. As the order continues to unfold, the consequences compound. The initial flaw, once abstract, then procedural, becomes material. The system encounters conditions it was never meant to address, yet it responds with the only tools it has: repetition, discipline, and forward motion. Attempts to stabilize conditions consume resources faster than they can be replenished. Adjustments intended to preserve alignment introduce further distortion. The system begins to operate in a state of permanent correction, never returning to baseline. Still, the order remains unchanged. Communication grows strained. Messages are acknowledged later than expected. Confirmations arrive incomplete, then are amended. The cadence that once defined efficiency becomes irregular. These signals are recognized, but not interpreted as cause for suspension. Suspension would imply failure at the level of command. Instead, the structure treats the situation as a test of endurance. As pressure increases, the system narrows its focus. Non-essential processes are deferred. Reporting becomes abbreviated. The emphasis shifts to completion at any cost, though the cost is never named. Loss occurs here, but it is not individualized. It is measured in gaps, in absences, in missing confirmations. The structure records these losses as anomalies, then moves past them. There is no pause for accounting. The collapse is not dramatic. It is systemic. By the time the order can no longer be executed as written, the distinction between execution and failure has dissolved. Actions continue, but they no longer correspond to the original intent. The order has outpaced its own logic. What remains is motion without coherence. The system reaches a point where continuation no longer produces progress, only accumulation of consequence. Yet even here, there is no explicit stop. The procedures do not include a condition for this state. They were never designed to. The collapse completes itself not with an explosion or a single decisive moment, but with exhaustion. The structure expends what remains of its capacity, attempting to fulfill an instruction that can no longer be satisfied. When movement finally slows, it does so unevenly, leaving fragments of the order unfinished, unresolved, and unreconciled. The failure is total, not because the system ceased to function, but because it functioned exactly as intended. After the movement slows, the system does not stop. It stabilizes. Residual actions complete themselves according to procedure. Pending reports are finalized. Outstanding confirmations are either logged or formally closed due to loss of continuity. The language used to describe this phase is neutral and administrative. Terms are selected to indicate transition, not consequence. The order is no longer referenced directly. It does not require cancellation. It does not require reversal. It simply expires within the system as an active directive, replaced by follow-on instructions that address conditions as they now exist. These instructions do not name the failure. They respond to its effects without acknowledging its source. The structure absorbs the outcome through process. Records are compiled. Timelines are reconstructed. Sequences are reviewed for accuracy, not for meaning. Each action is matched against its corresponding authorization. Compliance is confirmed. Deviations are noted only where they occurred, never why they became necessary. Responsibility diffuses. No single node holds the order in its entirety anymore. It exists now only as fragments. A reference number here, a line item there, an archived transmission stored among thousands of others. Its presence is diluted by volume. Its significance is reduced by classification. Internal reviews occur, but they are bounded. They examine whether procedures were followed, whether communication protocols were observed, whether reporting intervals were maintained. In these examinations, the system performs well. The failures identified are local, technical, correctable. They are addressed with revised guidelines, additional safeguards, marginal adjustments. The order itself is not examined. To examine it would require reassembling the full chain, reconnecting intent to outcome. That process would demand authority across multiple layers, and authority across layers introduces instability. The structure avoids instability. Instead, the aftermath is managed through compartmentalization. Those who executed the order return to routine. Their tasks change, but the environment remains familiar. The discipline that governed execution now governs recovery. Silence resumes its procedural role. The absence of discussion is not enforced, it is understood. The system does not ask what could have been done differently. It asks what must be done next. Loss is accounted for statistically. Figures are entered into summaries that contextualize them among other figures from other operations. Trends are identified. Variances are explained. The language used is comparative, not descriptive. It ensures that no single outcome dominates the narrative. Time passes. New orders enter the system, moving through the same channels, formatted in the same language, validated by the same mechanisms. The structure shows no visible scar. Its routines remain intact. Its confidence persists. The previous order becomes background. It is referenced occasionally in indirect terms, as precedent, as data, as a case study stripped of immediacy. Its complexity is simplified for instruction. Its consequences are abstracted into lessons that reinforce procedure rather than challenge it. Nothing in the structure suggests that the order should not have been given. Nothing suggests that obedience itself was the catalyst. The system does not assign blame because blame would imply agency at the wrong level. Decisions are treated as outputs of process, not expressions of judgment. When outcomes are unfavorable, the response is refinement, not reconsideration. The hierarchy remains stable. Authority continues to function as before, its legitimacy unchallenged by results. The absence of disruption is taken as confirmation that the structure is sound. The failure is categorized as an exception, contained within the boundaries of acceptable risk. Silence completes the process. There is no formal closure, no statement of finality. The order fades from active memory, replaced by the steady rhythm of new directives moving downward, just as precisely, just as confidently. Somewhere within the system, the conditions that allowed the failure remain unchanged. The same channels, the same separations, the same assumptions embedded in language and form. They wait. The next order is already moving.